to show it to you?
There's no reason why we should scare it away.
Well, if you sit where that chair and you look, you see double,
Oh, you mean way down?
yeah.
Oh, at the end. Yes, I do see it now. That looks like a night heron. Yes, you're right.
It's very big.
Well, they
Yeah.
are here.
Gray sort of things. And they call what?
Isn't it wonderful about the pandas?
We shall have time alone will tell.
Yes, that's true.
Pandas come and pandas go.
Whether it was effective. Lasted 2 minutes. That's what Mary read.
It lasted 2 minutes.
I wonder if it happened.
Well, tell us about the train coming down.
Oh,
Tell us how you came in the old days
Well,
by train.
the first time we came, and every other time with Frederick, there was only once that we motored down. But the first time, of course, was by train.
And that was 1931?
31, the winter of 1931. We were guests of Mr. Birch's that winter, and for a number of winters afterwards, because he was living throughout the winter down here, and he had his staff and so forth. So we were simply for about 6 weeks guests of Mr. Birch. But I saw it for the first time. And that was when there was still sawgrass and bulrushes, snakes and birds out there. It was
Any
nothing.
alligators?
I don't remember seeing an alligator, but
This lake wasn't
it
here.
was marshland, of course, you know. It was not, hadn't been,
Yeah, drained or
yes.
dredged out.
And there was only a tiny little 2-plank footpath over this marshland where the bridge now is.
Yes.
And every time I crossed that 2-plank pathway, I saw snakes. And then it was down to the beach, you know. No gate, no wall or anything.
Was there a road there then?
There was but it was nothing but a little sand road.
Dirt road,
Just
or
that
sand.
road. It wasn't A1A.
Where were the nearest houses?
Huh?
Where were the nearest houses?
There were no houses
No
around
houses.
here.
So where were the nearest houses?
The nearest? Well, they were pretty well back towards town.
How did you get over the canal, the inland waterway?
Well, at that time, by that time, there was a little turnstile bridge.
Oh, which turned around to let the
Yes.
boats go
Yes,
by.
a man
Yes.
turned it, you know.
Turned it with a crank.
By hand. Something I've forgotten, but it was just a very primitive affair. And very narrow.
One car.
Just about, as I remember.
And the road over
And
here.
it wasn't used too much because, of course, there were not that many people going to the beach or anything.
Very
There
little
were no
traffic.
hotels along here.
No hotels.
No hotels.
Not even any sort of shingle-style inns?
No, not at that time, not the first. And when Frederick and I came down later, when he decided to dredge the marsh and make the waterway there, we had to stay at a little hotel in town, right down in town. And at that time, I would hardly have called it a town. It was a village.
Well, Sunrise Boulevard was how much of a road then? Just a little road?
There was none.
There
here.
was none.
The only east-west way of getting to the beach was by Las Olas.
Las Olas.
Yes, Las Olas. And it was after that that Mr. Birch gave the stretch of land for the Sunrise Boulevard. And that was all accomplished after I was married to Frederick.
After you were married.
Would
Yes.
that have been the late 30s?
Let me see. I would imagine. And
What year did you actually get married?
31,
31. So that was
1931.
the year you came down.
yes. And
So he owned the land, which is now Sunrise
Oh yes,
Boulevard.
he owned it. He owned it,
He owned
and
all of
gave it to the city for another east-west highway.
To match the Las Olas
Yes.
Boulevard or Las Olas.
Well, another outlet
Yes.
to the beach.
Yes.
And so forth. It was really needed. And if he hadn't done it, I don't know what would have happened. Something, I would imagine they would have had to take over, you know, by
When did-
eminent domain, a certain amount of land for it, because Las Olas alone couldn't take care of the traffic.
The gradually increasing traffic. When
Because,
did
as
he...
I say, that there were so few people.
Yes. When did he give the land for the state park?
At his death.
At his death.
No, I'm wrong. I am wrong about that. He gave it before his death, and there was quite a big and important meeting. Dr. Fairchild was there,
Oh.
and whoever was important in that day
Yes.
came for the dedication, and Mr. Birch was there, and Frederick and I attended, and all this and that. And he did. He gave it just shortly before his death. And then the rest of the property south of here, going as far north almost as Las Olas, he left in his will to a college in Ohio, you know.
Oh, Yellow Springs or whatever?
Yellow Springs
Yellow
is where
Springs.
it is, but the college is...
What is that college? I know perfectly well.
So do I. It's on the tip of my tongue. This is what happens to
Doesn't
me.
matter though.
Antioch.
Antioch College.
Antioch College
And the
in Yellow
reason
Springs, Ohio.
that he gave it to Antioch is because he spent part of his youth there.
Really?
His father was called by Horace Mann to come and teach at Antioch.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes, isn't it? And so Mr. Birch spent his youth, and until the time that he went to Chicago,
I see.
there.
Mm.
And so that is why when, after Frederick and I were married, and he said, I no longer want to share a house with anybody, he decided to spend his summers in Yellow Springs.
I see.
And he built a house at what was named Glen Helen, which was named for his daughter, Helen. And he built this house. It's now the president's house, I think.
For Antioch College.
Antioch.
When did he
Isn't
first
that
come down
fascinating?
here? When did he first come down here?
He came down in 1893, to get away from the great exposition, great Chicago
Oh, he didn't want to be there for
He
the
did not
Chicago
want,
exposition.
He did not want to spend that summer there because
Well, I don't blame him.
Well, Mrs. Birch's family from Buffalo were all coming with their coach and four, and he had to give up the stall that his pet cow was stalled in, you know, to one of the horses and so forth and so on. And he wanted none of the social goings on. He
So
simply
he-
wanted to get away from it all.
He
And
came to Florida.
he came down to Florida, and he was on the train with Mr. Flagler.
Oh, no.
Yes? This isn't it?
1893.
I've heard him tell the story.
Well, then when did Uncle Frederick come into the picture?
Well, when he married Helen
When was that?
in 1918 or 19, I don't know which. But he got one of the first visas that was given at that time to go out to China for their wedding trip.
That's
So
when he did some of the
Helen and Frederick
paintings
went
of China.
to China on their wedding trip, yes. So that's all of that part of it. And then the next winter, they came down to share the small cottage that Mr. Birch had up near Las Olas Boulevard. And that is when Mr. Birch told them that he wanted to give them a house lot. I think I've told you all
Which
of
is
that.
up here. This is it.
Yes, which is this. He was
You would
always,
describe this as a house lot?
he called it a house lot. I want to give you a house lot, he told them.
It's a tiny lot.
Yes, tiny. And when Frederick asked what it meant, and he said, as far as you can swing a cat, Frederick still wanted to know what it meant. And it turned out to be 700 feet along the ocean front and back to the inland waterway. So Frederick said, I'll build the house.
And then they started building that year.
I think Frederick too, I don't know whether that year or the next year, but the house was finished in 21. This house was built in 1921.
And this house lot, you say, was 700 feet long.
Yes, along the ocean front.
Yes, and from the ocean back to the canal.
Back to the inland
and that
waterway.
was as far as you could swing a cat.
So, according to Mr.
It must
Birch.
have been a tiny cat.
Well, this was his...
Certainly not a bobcat.
This was his picturesque way of talking.
Yes.
He really was quite a
But the
character.
land from here to Las Olas Boulevard is immense.
Yeah,
Immense, oh, it
not.
is indeed. And think what Antioch realized from that.
Antioch College must have been put on the map by that
Well,
gift.
I think it gave them millions, you know. They had to do all of the developing, yes.
But still,
And they had there were nothing like sewers. There was nothing like divisions. There were no streets. There was nothing.
That's
at
the way
that time.
people make money.
but what a
You wanted
wonderfully
to develop.
philanthropic thing to do.
Oh, Mr. Birch did.
Because it was a tremendous
well, he had
asset for the
he had
college.
nobody to leave it to.
Yes.
His daughter had died.
His daughter had
His
died.
son had died many years before, and there was nobody. But he was philanthropic.
Yes.
And he had a great vision of what Fort Lauderdale's future was to be, because he knew that that inlet and the Port Everglades was going to mean a great deal to South Florida. You
It's
know.
really the most important
Well,
port
it's the
on the
deepest.
coast.
It's the deepest one.
Yes.
It's deeper than the one in Miami.
Miami, yes.
But at the present time, they're not getting the boats that they did at one time. It has to do with city politics. I don't know what it is. And they haven't been able to get the kind of port manager that they need.
Did you ever read the book by Thomas Barber called That
I know
Vanishing
that book.
Eden?
Yes, I know that book.
That had a wonderful description of the time when Mr. Birch
Yes, yes.
must have first come down
yes,
here.
true. Mhm.
And what it was like in those days was alligators and snakes and
Yes.
malaria
Oh, of
and
course.
mosquitoes and all kinds of problems.
Yes, there was no development at all. It had started just before, and all that section to the north of Las Olas Boulevard canals had been made. It had been called Cooley's Hammock, and they had dredged the canals, but there wasn't a house built.
Cooley's Hammock.
Cooley's Hammock in those days, before it was developed.
Yes.
It was called Cooley's Hammock.
Well.
Well, it was really after World War II that all of this big development started.
That was when
wasn't
it started. But
All
what had
those
stopped it had started. But what stopped it was the
Depression.
crash of 29, you know.
I see.
And then also the great hurricane of 26.
26.
26 hurricane stopped everything.
I see.
This house was unroofed.
The roof was blown off
Blown
this
off.
house in
And a
1926?
second time the roof was blown off. And then Frederick made a division so that the full force of the wind couldn't
Take the whole...
take the whole thing, you see.
That was
it?
clever.
We talked
Yes.
about that yesterday.
So